All right, Laurice, you're on. So tell me, introduce yourself. Tell me who you are and what kind of what you work with your clients, and also what are you seeing right now out in the world with women?
So I am Laurice Duffy, um, and I have my bachelor's degree in psychology. I'm a certified life coach, and my most proud title is the mother of my four boys. I have triplet 20-year-olds and a 17-year-old, and a beautiful golden retriever Fenway, just our little angel. So I am working mostly with women. And what I'm finding most is that, I believe when we create a beautiful internal home, our external world transforms. And what I'm finding a lot of is that, women are just working so hard to control things outside of themselves. And, um, failing to recognize that, this self-love, and I don't mean self-love like bubble baths and massages and, girls' night with, dinner and wine. Those things are amazing and very necessary. But I mean the first step, the real core of, of what they need, which is that internal dialogue, how they speak to themselves on a daily basis, that relationship that they're having with themselves, that very first relationship, which sets the standard for the relationships that they have with other people. And I think it's so important that when we really value ourselves and when we really respect ourselves and when we consciously decide to speak to ourselves with kindness and with love and compassion, that sets the standards for how we expect others to treat us. And it's so important, and it's such an important first step in really creating a life that you really love, that's filled with, good relationships and good loving quality, life, just a good quality life where you feel good about you. And that's where it starts. That's where our power is.
Yeah. So tell me the inner dialogue. What are women saying to themselves that you feel that is denying them self love?
I think a lot of women speak to themselves, I'm not enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not pretty enough, I can't do that, how stupid that I would have said that. A lot of should haves, need to instead of want to. I think we find our power in the things that we want to do, the things that we choose to do, understanding that we make mistakes and that those are our stepping stones to truly succeeding. And that's how we learn. I call them must stakes, not mistakes. I think that when we can really, find that power within ourselves to choose, choose who we want to be, choose how we're going to think about, what we're thinking about. There's so much power in thought. And I think that that's just the first step. It's the first step into really creating a beautiful life and one that you feel good about.
Yeah. So if I was having those inner dialogues about myself, that I'm not worthy, that I'm not good enough, I'm stupid. So what could I do to really start getting
Mm,
in there? Like where's that sweet spot of that
yeah.
seed? Like where does that start and how do we start?
A lot of times those are taken, we kind of have taken them on from our childhood, parents, caregivers, or they're things we've heard, they're things that, sort of have been passed down to our subconscious and become part of our personal belief system. And I believe that we have to recognize, I call it, our inner critic, our a gremlin. And what I have my clients do is really identify what is it for them? What is that message that they're hearing? And I actually have them describe to me what it looks like, this thing, right? I ask them to name it. I always share, don't name it somebody that, and I'm not a good friend or a child's name. Come up with a name. I have a client that sees me on Wednesday and her gremlin's name was Wednesday. And then once we identify it and we have a name for it, we then, we then speak to it and we share with it that I don't need you anymore. You are not me. You are separate from me. And we try to lessen its power. And I remind them to share, when they're having these thoughts, in this client's case, Wednesday, be quiet. I got this. I'm doing well. We sort of just separate it and take it outside of feeling like it's who we are and it's something separate. And that just lessens the power of that inner critic, that judger.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I have a worksheet that's called Practicing Happiness and Joy. Like sometimes we forget it's a practice. We think it should just come natural.
Absolutely. And I always say, I have a trainer and we started with like 5 pounds and, now we're up to 15. It's the same thing. We're working a muscle and we have to just keep lifting those weights. We have to practice those steps, and it's a practice of progress, not perfection. Sometimes we're so hard on ourselves when we get it wrong. And what we have to remember is that, we're just taking steps. We start with an awareness and we take steps forward. It doesn't mean that we aren't kind to ourselves when we take a step backwards. It's being kind to ourselves in those moments and listening to our bodies. I always say feelings are data. Listening to our bodies and hearing what it needs and understanding what it's trying to tell you is part of the whole process. So it's so important.
Yeah, so Jen, is this better? Janice says, "Can I be louder?" I'm not loud enough. So there's a question in the audience that they pre-submitted, and I know your story of losing someone, and the question is, how do you find the strength to move on in your life? Like, can you speak into that? Because I think you'd be, so tell us a little bit about that, and then speak into like, how do you find the strength to move on?
So yes, my husband was extremely, healthy and very athletic and strong. The coach for my children's, I have 4 boys, that my 4 children are all boys, and he was their basketball, baseball, and football coach. And he was diagnosed very unexpectedly. He was having a few odd symptoms that we were trying to figure out, and was diagnosed with ALS, and passed away. And I think that we are either pushed by pain or pulled by pleasure. And I was pushed by pain. I couldn't control my husband's illness. I couldn't control that he was going to die, even though we tried very hard to come up with every treatment, every therapy, we did everything, researched, saw a gazillion doctors. I couldn't control my husband's illness. But what I recognized after a while was that I was able to control me. And I had choices, and I could tap into the power within. And I knew that I couldn't change my children losing their father. But on 2 occasions that were very pivotal, my children, sharing with them for the second time that it was definitely ALS and that daddy, only had a certain amount of time to live. The only words that were spoken were, "Mom, are you okay?" And it really struck me that they were asking me if I was okay. And what I realized was that they had accepted that their father was going to die. But they wanted to make sure that they were going to lose him, but they wanted to make sure that they weren't going to lose their mom. And that's where I really reclaimed my power, where I realized I had an opportunity to be the example of strength. I had the opportunity to lead them through this journey of tragedy and death. And who was I going to be? Who was I going to be? And I had that choice. That choice was mine. I truly believe that, you're a product of your choices, not a victim of your circumstance. So really deciding well, who do I need to be here? Who do I want to be aside from my circumstances? And listen, talking to yourself, being kind to yourself, listening to your feelings, giving in to those feelings if you just need to rest for a while, if you just need a break. Seeking your support system is huge. Let people help you. You are giving them a gift. When you are needing strength because something terrible has happened in your life, let people help you. You are not only giving yourself a gift, giving your children a gift, but you're giving the people who want to help you and don't know how to do that a gift by allowing and by telling them, yes, this is what I need. And that's how we gain strength. We take one small step at a time.
Yeah, so a couple things hit me is because in my own experience, having the strength to move on sometimes it's just doing nothing on that level. It's like just give yourself love and grace.
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself that time to, because I mean, in circumstances of grief, sometimes you're trying to move too quickly away from it. So it's like if you move too quickly away from anything, it's very difficult instead of just processing, right?
Anytime we're moving away from something, we're avoiding something. The only way out of the pain is through the pain. So you have to understand that that's the only path. So really understanding your feelings and really, listening to those little messages and what they're trying to tell you and being respectful of them is huge. But definitely honoring your grief and allowing it. I always say, I always allow sadness in. I don't let it move in, but I allow it in and I sit with it. I sit with it and I allow it to sit next to me. And sometimes even out loud, I say, I know you're here. You're welcome. You're welcome to be here with me. And I'm just going to sit here with you. I had one incident where I was supposed to go out to dinner with a bunch of friends and I just got hit with a wave. I actually passed a car with a father and a son had baseball caps on. And I decided that father was his son's coach and they were going to a game and it struck me. And I said to my girlfriend, I'm not sure I can come tonight. And she said, oh, wait, we want you to come so bad. I said, I may be able to, but I have to go home for a while. And I went home and I just laid on my couch and I sat with sadness. And you know what? After a few hours, it just sort of melted away. And I went to dinner that night, even though it would have been fine if I didn't. But I just allowed it. When what we resist persists. So when we don't push it away, it's like a beach ball. Do you ever try to push down a blown up beach ball in the pool? It always pops back up. Feelings are the same exact way. So just be with them, allow them.
Yeah, so so something's coming up for me where it's like, it's like that conditioning, you feel too much. You're saying you shouldn't feel that way. You should be over it by now. All these outside things, right? So, and it's an interesting thing when you do have something in your life that you want to move, that you really you got hit hard with. It is a learning experience of what to allow in your life and what not to allow in your life, and that's where really a lot of the growth starts happening, because if you start putting up like, you know what, I don't think that person's good for me, or I don't think that circumstances is good for me, because when you go through it, all of a sudden you're overwhelmed with your emotions. So could you speak into that?
I think you have to get clear on your tribe. I think you have to really get clear on what energy are you going to allow into your space. And being really thoughtful about that. And it doesn't mean you have to have an argument with somebody. It's choosing. It's choosing to allow it's choosing to be around the people that are going to help create a space of grace, love, compassion, kindness, and support. And the people who aren't able to provide that, you don't even have to have judgment around that. You just have to choose that they're not the best people for you at this time.
And one of the questions is like how to be able to trust myself. That's like that's like an interesting, that right there is like, that's when you start trusting yourself, when you start like putting up might not be a good situation, when you start making the decisions from a place of being and who you are. That's how you really start developing that trust in yourself. Can you speak into trust? You know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. You could call it your gut, your higher mentor,
Mm.
your inner mentor, rather, your higher consciousness. You can call it whatever you want, but pay attention to it, because that's where the answers are. That's where the truth of who you are and what is right for you. So sometimes we just have to quiet down and again pay attention to those little feelings. They're like little messengers coming in trying to share something with us that we need to know. Don't push away those feelings. Pay attention to them and listen. I think a great way to really get in touch with our higher mentor is meditating and just sitting quietly. And it could be a guided meditation. It could be just focusing on your breath, but really getting quiet for even just 10 minutes a day where you're really going inward. And I think that so many answers we can find when we go within.
And my next question that comes up is, how do you find a quiet space with four boys? Like, you guys, with all the parents, with the being home, like how do moms or dads and dads do that? Like how do you do it, Laurice? How do you find that time?
So I have a place all set up. I actually have a place in my office back here, but I also have a better place in my room. And what I find that I do is it's all set up. So I have a book called the Journey to the Heart, which are just daily passages that just really start my day out really nicely. And then I just sit for 10 minutes and I meditate. And you know what? Sometimes when there's loudness going on, that's the best time to practice, right? Because we want to feel this sense of calm amidst the chaos. That's true inner peace. So when there is busyness going on, that's a time where I feel like I'm really hitting the weights hard. I'm really practicing the ability to find that inner peace inside amidst the noise outside of myself. So, prioritizing even saying to the kids, okay, you know what, Mom, is everybody good right now? Unless they're really young, but if they're at an age where you can, they can be maybe watching a show for 20 minutes and you can just go into the next room where you're right there, but you can, and explaining to them. I used to explain to my kids when they were young, and I had 4 kids, 2.5 and under. And when they were at an age where they were a little bit older, I would say, Mom's going to go eat her lunch right now. I would like 15 minutes to quietly sit uninterrupted. So if you guys can just find me if there's an emergency, but if it's just a question, if you can just wait, just so I can have some time to myself that I could count on. And that was just the way it was. And I gave that to myself. I deserved that. Listen, they had all of me when they needed it, but 15 minutes, I deserved that. And I gave that to myself.
Mm-hmm. And what a gift you gave to them, actually. Right? So speak about that gift. The gift that when you tell your children, show your children that you're taking care of yourself.
Well, yeah, so I love that question. And it's interesting because when my husband was sick, I had 4 kids that were, pretty young. I think the triplets might have been a teenager. I think Aiden was 12. And I decided I was going to go get certified as a life coach. I was running a small business. I was taking care of 4 kids, running our home, and taking care of a sick husband. And I decided that I needed to do this. And one night there's a module that you have to go to. It's 30 hours in 3 days. I came home at 8:00 at night and my youngest son came barreling through. It was dark out, came barreling through the door. And he says, oh my gosh, I had a basketball game and nobody was home to drive me. So I didn't have a coat on. I had a backpack on me and I held my basketball in one hand and I found a bike in the shed and I drove it. It wasn't far, the school. And I drove it and it had a flat tire, but I drove it anyway because I had to get to my game. And he says, and then I drove it home. And instead of saying to myself, what an awful mother, I can't believe you're doing this. you are so resourceful. And he said,
Yes.
I know. And I thought, what a gift I've just given him to know this about himself, because I wasn't there to take him, and it wasn't so perfect the way it had always been before his father was sick and before I was really choosing to do something for me. And I also became the example of someone, of teaching them that you have to be true to yourself too. Yes, my responsibility was to be a good mother, but I have to be true to me too. I'm a person, and I'm going to treat myself with the same compassion and kindness that I treat everyone else with.
And sometimes I think moms do the or. It should be and.
Absolutely.
I could be
Absolutely.
good to myself and to my children.
And recognizing that being good to yourself is being good to your children, like you just said. That's teaching them. That's being the example. Children learn so much so much more by our actions than what we say. They're watching. They are watching all the time. So when they see that this is how you treat yourself, they take on treating themselves the same.
And I think that's important because it's, as I said, you guys are all with your kids all the time. And sometimes it's just easier for you to do it for them because it's going to be quicker instead of letting them try, fail, try again, right? So
I absolutely agree. And sometimes, Amy, I even say to my kids, I love you too much to be selfish enough to do this for you. I'm going to ask you to pay for half of your college in one case, or of a semester rather, because I believe that that is the best thing for you. And selfishly, I'm not going to do it so I feel good. I'm more worried about what's best for you.
So how can we start making those steps? Who out there in the audience does that for the kids? The kids are taking too long, so you just jump in and do it for them. I mean, write it in the chat box if that's you. And it's a quick instinct to just,
Absolutely. And I want to share, I've been there. I've done it. This is we're all, trying to, and we're learning as we go along, right? And sometimes we're doing good. And then we kind of get, we have a step back. That's okay. That's okay. It's just having the awareness about who, are we raising children or are we raising adults? Really getting clarity about what are we trying to do here and what do we want the outcome to be? And when we can think about what do we want the outcome to be, we can then back up our steps and think, well, who do we need to be to get that outcome for our kids?
Which is why we're going to go back to the beginning. Like knowing yourself, who you are and what you're saying to yourself and what's going on internally and in your mind and how you feel about yourself is important for everybody. You are the beacon, right? You are the center, and people come out from that. So being taking care of yourself and really getting in touch with who you are and what you think is super important.
Absolutely.
So I have Doreen. Her children are 13 and 15. They teach them to do for themselves. Very nice. Leslie Searcy, who she's a friend of mine. She still struggles with this, and he's 20 years old. I have a lot of stories about that, but I won't say anything about his son. But it is hard sometimes, when you're especially in this situation. So I appreciate. Leslie says those ideas are great. Really think about those.
I think parenting is hard.
Yeah.
Parenting, it ain't for sissies, that's for sure. I mean, it's hard. But we just have to, stay the course and stay in there and know that we're not perfect. None of us are. We're doing the best that we can.